I am convinced that this partisan, corrupt, rigged process will result in an unjust, guilty verdict against President Trump and a criminal conviction. I think that this judge may even try to put President Trump in prison. And selfishly, as a political hack, I kind of hope that Mershon is that stupid, because right now Trump is going to win by probably 1 or 2 points. If they try to put him, if they convict him, I think it's going to be 3 or 4 points. And if they try to put him in prison, it's going to be landslide territory, like 5 or 6 points.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Sean Spicer Show. The jury instructions are in. The jury debating. It's off to the races now. Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project is here to rate the two sides, how they did before the jury got their instructions from Judge Mershon. You wouldn't believe what happened yesterday. You looking at me, I'm looking at you. They literally, for the first time in 5 weeks, the Biden folks did the quiet part out loud. I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. It was unbelievable. I talk about a rookie mistake, and they're doubling down on it today, but I'll tell you about that in just a second. Before we get into that, though, I do want to ask you a question. If you have back taxes that you owe the IRS, the Democrats, as you can guess, spent a ton of money, like millions and billions of dollars, hiring thousands and thousands of new IRS agents. And guess what they're going to do? Yeah, they're going to come after us. And so 5 million Americans are apparently getting what they call pay up letters who have unfiled taxes. So, I mean, you may owe $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, $1 million. I don't even know. But here's the thing. Don't waive your rights. Do not speak to the IRS without representation. They are not your friends. I suggest you call the folks at Tax Network USA. They are a trusted tax relief firm. They've saved over $1 billion, $1 billion in taxes owed for their clients, and they can help you as well. So if you owe $10,000, $1 million, $10 million, they can help you. Whether that's business or personal taxes, it doesn't matter. They've got the expertise. They've covered the whole spectrum. Even if you have the means to pay, or if you're on a fixed income, it's worth it to have that conversation. Call 1-800-245-6000, 1-800-245-6000 to speak with them, or go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Full name there, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Have the conversation before you talk to the IRS with them. All right. De Niro was outside the courthouse yesterday. Let me just play this for you and then I'll explain.
I love this city. I don't want to destroy it. Donald Trump wants to destroy not only the city, but the country, and eventually he could destroy the world. But we vowed we would not allow terrorists. I owe this city a lot.
Okay, so you're wondering, why is Robert De Niro at a courthouse? It's because this was organized. The guy behind him is the comms director for the Biden campaign. This is when they decide to come out. They literally, as I said at the beginning, did the quiet part out loud. What do I mean by that? Normally we always joke, they said the quiet part out loud. They showed up. They admitted this was them basically admitting that this is political. Here's the campaign camping out with January Capitol police officers who were involved in January 6th to bracket the president. This is called a bracketing operation. You send surrogates. I used to do it all the time. When I was at the RNC, we would send people to an event the Dems were hosting, even the DNC. And we would set up shop and talk about, them. That's what they did. They just basically admitted that this is all political. Thank you, Robert De Niro. Unbelievable. All right. As I said, the jury has the instructions today. It's off to the races. Who did well? Who didn't do well in terms of laying out the predicate for this case? And does Donald Trump stand a chance? Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project is here. You've seen them for all over the place. These guys are prosecuting the case in the media, explaining to people what's at stake. He was the former head of judicial nominations for the Senate Judiciary Committee. He has been amazing at this work. I want to bring in Mike, but before I do this, I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors. And I'm sure a lot of people right now in that courtroom have gut issues, but they're for different reasons. When I interviewed Tina from Just Thrive the other day, I realized that 80 to 90% of Americans have gut issues, some kind. You think about indigestion, acid reflux, all the things, heartburn, indigestion that goes on, gas and bloating that happen in our gut. It also affects our mood. A healthy gut affects our mood. So there's so much that is responsible for a healthy gut. And a lot of people just assume, okay, I'll take a probiotic and that'll help give me a healthy gut. And they're kind of right, except what probiotic you take matters. Okay. And this is the difference, because 99.9% of probiotics don't get to where they're supposed to go. It gets eaten up in your stomach before it actually gets to where it goes. The thing that's so amazing about the folks at Just Thrive, and they've got two products that I started taking, both Just Calm and then this probiotic that Tina was explaining. These are clinical grade products, not generics. And there's more research behind the products here at Just Thrive than anywhere else. They are keto and paleo friendly. They're kid friendly. They provide immunosupport, boost energy, improve sleep, promote healthy skin, all the things that you want. That's why it's so important. If you're interested in trying it like I did, I'm now taking both of these. For a limited time, you can save 20% off a 90-day supply of either the Just Calm or the probiotic. 20% off. Where are you going to get that in the Biden economy? Go to justthrivehealth.com. Enter key promo code SPICER, justthrivehealth.com, promo code SPICER, 20% off a 90-day supply. All right, let's bring in Mike Davis. Mike, thanks for being with us on this important day. Let me just start by asking this. Give me your synopsis of the closing arguments of the defense and the prosecution, and just take it from a purely analytical standpoint. What did each side do well?
So I think that President Trump's team did a very good job of explaining to the jury that there is no crime here. President Trump did not commit a crime. It is not a crime for a businessman to settle a nuisance claim. That is routine for business people. If that were a crime, there would be a lot of business people in jail. It's also not a crime for a presidential candidate to, quote, try to scheme to influence the election, which is apparently now the second so-called non-crime that Trump committed, to turn these bookkeeping misdemeanors. They're not even bookkeeping misdemeanors, because a legal expense is a legal expense. I don't know what else you would call it. But to transform these time-barred bookkeeping misdemeanors from 2017 into felonies. Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo, this Biden political operative, had to come up with a legal theory where Trump somehow committed a second crime to cover up his first alleged crime of putting in his books in 2017 this payment of this nuisance claim. Somehow that 2017 bookkeeping entry in his private books was somehow a business bookkeeping violation, and that business bookkeeping violation somehow affected the 2016 campaign, even though it was in 2017. So I think President Trump's attorneys did a very good job of explaining there was not a crime. They also did a good job of eviscerating the so-called star witnesses, Michael Cohen, the serial perjurer, disbarred attorney, felon, and even admitted to embezzling $60,000 from Trump, and Stormy Daniels, who's changed her story several times, like Michael Cohen. They're both raising money online. Stormy Daniels through her pinned porn site on Twitter, Michael Cohen through his TikTok page trashing Trump. I think that Trump's attorneys did a very good job of destroying what little credibility those two had. So even if there were a crime, Trump didn't commit that crime. They have no evidence that Trump committed that crime. But unfortunately, Sean, I don't think that's going to be enough. I don't think with this corrupt partisan.
Well, let's just. Process. I want to get to your analysis and say, but and again, I just trying to be as neutral as you can be, as analytical. What did if you're looking at this straight on from a legal standpoint, did the prosecution, what were their positives?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm a Trump supporter, so It's hard for me to do this, but I'll try to be objective as an attorney. I don't think that they did an effective job making their case. They spent over 5 hours in their closing arguments, and they're just now coming up with their legal theory in the closing argument after the allegations, after the motions to dismiss, after the trial, after the witnesses, after the defendants' closing arguments. They're just now coming up with the legal allegations against President Trump, which is just blatantly unconstitutional that you wouldn't tell the criminal defendant what he must defend against until at the very end when there's no opportunity for him to say another word. But they did a good job of cobbling together their bogus legal theory. And the problem is this Democrat Manhattan judge, Juan Merchan, has let them cobble together this bogus legal theory where this judge who donated to Biden, illegal campaign donation to Biden that got him reprimanded by the New York judicial system, whose adult daughter, Lauren Merchan, is raising millions of dollars off this case. This Judge Merchan is conflicted under New York statute. He has to recuse. He's refused. Instead, he's threatened to throw Trump in jail if he points out these conflicts.
It's so nuts. I can't believe people are pissed off about Mrs. Alito flying a flag, and yet this guy's daughter's making millions of bucks, and they're like, "Yeah, no problem." I want to ask you though, like, what should did the Trump? And I get where you are, but I'm just objectively speaking. I've listened to a lot of these pundits. Did the Trump team miss an opportunity, or some on CNN and others are saying that by bringing up Stormy Daniels that was a mistake? Is there anything that you think that maybe they missed the mark on?
No, I'm not. I think they've done a very effective job. President Trump has a very good legal team with loyalists, with very seasoned, experienced trial attorneys and Supreme Court advocates who are preserving the legal issues for appeal. Look, there's no chance Trump's going to get a fair. At best, there's a hung jury. I don't even think there's going to be a hung jury here. I think President Trump's going to be found guilty in this partisan, rigged, corrupt process that was orchestrated by this Manhattan judge, Juan Merchan, like I said, whose daughter's raising millions off of this criminal trial. Judge Merchan has to deliver for Biden, because he knows if he does not deliver for Biden Democrats, Lauren Merchan is going to not get these millions of dollars in contracts from Biden Democrats. She's going to be destroyed in the Democrats' fundraising and consulting business. So Juan Merchan has a direct financial stake in this unprecedented criminal trial over which he's presiding. He knows he has to deliver. You have a partisan, Soros-funded Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, who campaigned on getting Trump. You have Matthew Colangelo, a former top Biden Justice Department political appointee. He was the acting number 3 on the parachute team. He worked for the Obama White House. He worked for the Obama Justice Department. He worked for the Obama.
You can't make this crap up. I mean, honest to God. I feel like this is a bad episode of, like, if somebody brought this to Hollywood, the writers would be like, listen, this is way over the top. We can't, like, you got to tone it down. I will say this, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, somebody should take note today or tomorrow. If he's found guilty, how many fundraising pitches Judge Merchan's daughter sends out on behalf of her clients? I think just that goes to prove the point. They were dying to make money. One of the things that I find fascinating is this additional so-called charge. The Trump campaign, as I understand it, or excuse me, Trump team, was not allowed to bring in like an FEC, a Federal Election Commission expert, to say, no, this doesn't actually constitute a violation of federal election law. Here's why the FEC passed. Here's why the DOJ passed on ever charging with anything. Why weren't they allowed to do that?
Well, that's a very good question. And I would say this objectively, as a general matter, generally you have the judge instruct the jurors on the law. That's the judge's job. But when you have these very complex legal issues, it may have been a good time to call in an expert, even if they're not advising on the specifics of the jury instructions, just in general about how campaign finance law works. But the problem with Judge Merchan's ruling, where he excluded Brad Smith from coming in, the former FEC chairman, the problem is that this judge let the prosecutors let Michael Cohen testify about his legal opinions on campaign finance law. So, I mean, if you're gonna let the prosecutor educate,
so is that grounds for appeal? I mean, I can't understand. The jury should know that, right? I mean, I know enough. I mean, I've been doing campaigns since the 90s. I mean, I know I don't have a law degree, but I know enough about the law that I'm like, why can't he explain that this is not an issue?
Look, there are so many reversible errors in this corrupt, partisan rigged trial by Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo. If and when the jury finds him guilty and Merchan convicts, this will go on appeal. there is no doubt that the appellate courts will reverse this criminal conviction because it's so illegal and unconstitutional on so many different levels, from not explaining what the legal allegations are against the defendant to illegally, unconstitutionally gagging the defendant while they let the star witnesses trash the defendant. That turns the gag orders on its head. Gag orders are supposed to protect criminal defendants, not to muzzle them when they're speaking out against a partisan, corrupt, and rigged process. I mean, it's just there's no evidence to support that Trump committed any crime. Even if they allege a crime, there's no evidence that Trump committed any crime. There's just so many issues that will certainly get this conviction reversed on appeal. The problem is this, and the Democrats know this. They're going by the old polling and the old playbook. They think if they get Trump convicted, if Mershon delivers, so his daughter doesn't get fired from Biden Democrat campaign consulting and fundraising. If Mershon delivers and Trump is labeled a convicted felon, these Biden Democrats think that that's going to hurt Trump in the general election on November 5th. The problem is that the American people understand now, in big part thanks to the Article 3 project's 3,500 plus media hits over the last 23 months, constant social media, constant opinion pieces. The American people understand, according to the polling, that this is obviously Biden Democrat lawfare and election interference, and it's going to backfire on them as we've predicted for the last 23 months.
I was listening to that interview this weekend with Dennis Quaid, and he was saying the same thing. I mean, he was like, yeah, I've seen enough of the lawfare. And I think a lot of it, to your point about Article 3 and you and being out there, is explaining it to people what's happening. You brought up the jury. There is some reporting by a reporter named Mark Caputo who's at the Bulwark. And he writes about one particular juror, and he says, this person on the juror has appeared to nod along in seeming accordance with the defense at times, and lit up when J.D. Vance and some other high-profile surrogates showed up at the courthouse. Another insider pointed out the juror could barely suppress a smile when Blanche, that's Trump's attorney, appeared to trip up Cohen on the witness stand during a heated exchange. How much should we read into, you talked about the jury, that some juror subscribes to Truth Social, some jurors nodding along. Is this just pundits buying time, or is there something there?
There might be something there, but think about that. If you have an 87% Biden voter jury pool in Manhattan, and then Judge Mershon and Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo further rigged the jury selection process by weeding out the 3 people in Manhattan who follow Trump on social media, or, whatever it is, a handful of people, a very small number, and did not weed out the Biden people who follow him on social media. So it's already stacked against Trump, and then it was further rigged, and then the trial was corrupted by a judge who should have recused because his daughters were fundraising off the case, and then it was further rigged in these jury instructions where this judge has said, you know what, jurors, you don't even have to agree unanimously what the second supposed crime or misconduct was that Trump committed that turned these alleged bookkeeping misdemeanors that are time barred somehow into these 34 felonies. You don't have to unanimously agree what that second crime is. Just make up one, whatever you think. If 4 of you think it's a federal election crime, go with that. If 4 of you think it's a state election crime, go with that. If four of you think it's something else, go with that. As long as you just unanimously find Trump guilty, it doesn't matter how you get there. I mean, it's a rigged, corrupt, partisan process. And it's pretty bad that Trump's only hope right now is that 1 out of the 12 jurors might say, no, I'm not going to vote to find him guilty here. But guess what? If it's a hung jury, guess what happens, Sean? Then Colangelo and Bragg and Mershon immediately send Trump to a retrial and keep him in trial again for the next 2 or 3 months instead of on the campaign trail.
Well, all right. Why are they making him stay in the courtroom during deliberations? I thought, like when I watch Law and Order, they all go hang out somewhere and then someone comes and runs and says the jury's back. Why are they making him stay in the courtroom?
That's a very good question. I don't know why he has to be in that courtroom. I guess he has to be ready just in case the jury's...
But I mean, I don't get it. What is that normal? Again, my courtroom experience is watching TV. I've never seen the defendant be forced to stay in a room.
Yeah, I've been an attorney for 20 years. I've represented clients in civil trials and criminal trials. I've never heard of a defendant having to sit in the courtroom while the
Right.
jury deliberates. Maybe there's something particular to New York law of which I'm not familiar. Maybe there's something maybe these are special proceedings for President Trump, because it seems like these Biden Democrat
Why not?
prosecutors and judges and witnesses would much rather have Trump stuck in a courtroom because they know how effective
Right.
he is when he goes out to the sticks.
Okay, so I have two things I want to get to you with. One is, so what is the outcome? What do you think ultimately happens? It sounds to me you're convinced this is going to be a guilty verdict.
I am convinced that this partisan, corrupt, rigged process will result in an unjust, guilty verdict against President Trump in a criminal conviction. I think that this judge may even try to put President Trump in prison. And selfishly, as a political hack, I kind of hope that Mershon is that stupid, because right now Trump is going to win by probably 1 or 2 points. If they convict him, I think it's going to be 3 or 4 points. And if they try to put him in prison, it's going to be landslide territory, like 5 or 6 points.
Anyway, I'm so disgusted by this. This is why I love having you on, because you really can explain to make sure that I don't feel like I'm completely whacked when my lack of legal experience clashes with the reality of what's happening. The last thing I want to ask you is un-Trump related. President Biden this weekend visited Haley Biden, who was Beau's wife that Hunter started dating, to be PG on this. Hunter is going to start his trial soon. Is that inappropriate? And she's going to testify, is why it matters. So just the last thing I want you to touch on, is that an inappropriate witness tampering thing? Or is that just, hey, I get to visit. She's still the mother of my grandkids. I wanted to visit her.
Yeah, it sounds like witness tampering and obstruction of justice, or at least that needs to be investigated. Has President Biden ever visited her in her house before? How often? When? Why now? Why right before Hunter Biden's trial? Joe Biden likes to blame his son's death for everything that he does, every mistake that he makes, and he's trying to say that he wanted to go visit his former daughter-in-law, who was married to Beau and then started hooking up with Hunter. And then Hunter is on trial for a gun charge right now in Delaware. And the president of the United States brings his entire Secret Service entourage and shows up at her house at like 8 o'clock at night, several days before she's going to be a key witness in Hunter Biden's criminal trial. It doesn't look good. And I hope and expect that the prosecutors will ask her about her conversation, what was said, what was done, what was signaled by President Trump
President Biden.
in this private, completely unusual meeting.
Yeah. Just complete coincidence. I never do this except right before he's facing trial. Mike Davis, always appreciate it. Thanks for all the work that you and Article 3 are doing on this.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mike. Unbelievable what we're facing, and we'll keep an eye on this. Obviously, this is something that we'll talk about. But, I told you guys about my weekend, and last night was no different. We get these alerts. I don't know if it's just the time of the season. We had massive, massive thunderstorms again. And I'm not talking just like a bunch. I mean, this is like scary stuff, lightning. There's been tornado watches. And so I've told you guys before about being prepared and being ready. And I know I am, because I've got a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in my house. We don't know. It could be an hour. It could be, several hours a day. The time that it happened a few years back, it was 5 or 6 days. I think I've told you guys this. I was running back and forth between a local gas station. One was closed, one was open, filling up a gas generator. I had to have it outside with cords in and out. The cool thing about the Patriot Power Generator 2000X is it's fumeless, because it runs off solar panels that come free with it. So you're literally just running off the sun. There's no cords that are running in and outside, because you can put it inside your house. There's no bad fumes, no noise, no nothing. But the cool part is it runs everything. I mean, your fridge, your tablets, your computers, medical devices, everything that you need. And it's completely portable. So if it's not your house that's the problem, maybe a neighbor, a family member, you can bring it to them. Go to 4patriots.com right now /Spicer. I'm just telling you, when something happens, you don't want to be going, gosh, I wish I had visited 4patriots.com, because now I'm relying on a neighbor. I hope someone has one they can bring to my house. You want to be ready for yourself, for your family, maybe the family that lives with you, maybe the family that lives nearby you or a friend, but be that person. Get ready now in case of emergency. This is such a great thing to have in your house. And like I said, it's completely powered by solar panels that come with it. And it's unbelievably powerful. It powers all of the things that you need. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. All right. A lot happening beyond the Trump trial. I want to recap a couple of the things. One thing that happened this weekend, and I want to play this for you so you understand the context. You hear me talk about the power of the media and the narratives they set. This was a roundtable that Kristen Welker of Meet the Press, and someone, by the way, please just put Meet the Press out of its misery. It's got to stop. This has gotten so bad and so unwatchable. If I wasn't addicted the way I am, I don't know how I could do it. But I watch them so that you don't have to. She had these 4 secretaries of state, and of course, democracy under threat, democracy's under attack. We got to help it and save it. So she has these 4. But listen to her talk about non-citizens. I want to play the video for you so you see what I'm talking about. Take a listen.
I want to turn now to something that's getting a lot of attention, efforts to prevent non-citizens from voting. We should note that it's exceedingly rare, and yet some officials believe it's an urgent matter, including yourself, Secretary Raffensperger. Why? And we should note it's already against the law to vote if you're a non-citizen.
Because I believe only American citizens should be voting in our elections. And I ran back in 2018 saying the same thing. I'm the first Secretary of State in Georgia to ever do 100% citizenship verification. And what we found was about 1,600 people that attempted to register, but we couldn't verify citizenship, so they weren't put on the voter rolls. So my fellow Georgians asked me, are non-citizens voting in Georgia? I can say, no, they aren't, because we've checked it. And then we've just won a court case, which came from the left, for the Coalition of the People's Agenda and the New Georgia Project, which was founded by Stacey Abrams. We won that court case because they tried to stop us from doing citizenship verification before people were put on the voter rolls. We won that court case, and because we won that court case, we put an end to it in Georgia. But also, any other state that gets sued can use us as, an example, as a precedent to make sure you can check your voter
We were
rolls.
both going to jump in.
Go ahead.
Secretary,
I've
got good news for everyone. All of us want to make sure only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections, and all of us follow the law, ensure the federal provisions are protected, and that we're ensuring that only valid votes are counted in our state. So we're all committed to that, and I think it's really important for folks to know that regardless of our party affiliation,
you're not.
We're doing all that we can and more
No, you're
to
not.
ensure, as the facts show in all of our states, that only U.S. citizens are
But the
voting.
key point you just said, though, was federal provisions. There's no provision for state law other than state law. And so states really should put in their constitution, like the state of Georgia, I've asked them to do, make sure that only American citizens are voting in any election in your state.
Yeah, it's amazing. The case, and listen to what Raffensperger says. These efforts to stop checking this are led by the left. They're so defensive, aren't they? But here's the thing. I've brought this up before. Understand a few things. Also, watch Welker. There's no evidence. We haven't seen this. I mean, this is an effort. Well, first of all, Florida, a presidential election in 2000 was decided by 300 votes. So how many is okay? How many Americans' votes have to get washed out before it matters? I don't care if it's 2. Let me remind you of a couple things. Number 1, banks don't put locks and guards and alarms on vaults that have been robbed. They do it to prevent it. If you treasure something, if you value something, then you cherish it and you do something to ensure that it can't be undermined, right? You lock your door at night, not because it's been broken into, but because you want to prevent it. If we value the power and importance of our vote, then we should be doing everything to protect it, not waiting until an election is spoiled. What are they afraid of? What is the left? Because they're the ones who are suing to stop this. That's number 1. Number 2, I've brought this out before, and this has been brought up on this show. Chad Prather, I think, made a great argument. A couple other folks, same thing. If you allow people to come into this country illegally, so they break the law once to coming into this country, then we give them a license and reward them. And then the other side says they're going to kick you out if you don't vote for Democrats. What's stopping someone who broke the law once from breaking the law again if they believe that the other side will kick them out, i.e. Republicans? Democrats are encouraging this. And then they want to let them vote in local elections. Trust me, I mark this show down. This is like pronouns and all the other stuff. We're going to say this is silly. This is ridiculous. And in a year, 2 years from now, it's going to be, you're racist for not letting anyone with a pulse vote. Who cares if they're a citizen of your country or not? It's starting now. It's starting today. And we are going to look back and say, oh my gosh. But you hear Kristen Welker jump to the defense as she does this every time on every issue, abortion, you name it. It's not a big deal. There's no evidence. Where are we supposed to look? You gave these guys licenses, and now you tell us we can't do this? I'm just telling you, mark my word, this is going to be a big issue in this election. And we need to be on guard. You need to do what you can. It's like the TSA thing. If you see something, say something. After the fact, it doesn't count. The biggest issue of the 2020 elections was judges saying, hey, what do you want us to do now? We have to stop this ahead of time. Voter ID for a reason, and the real IDs that you have to prove your citizenship, common sense. And it's agreed upon across the aisle. It's the Dem leaders, the leftist leaders that understand the consequences of this. What are they afraid of? Why are they trying to stop it? If you don't think it's a big deal, then just go, hey, no problem. We're for it. But they're against it for a reason. All right. Couple other things for you. Ken Burns, you know, the documentarian. I've seen some of his work. I've always thought the guy was a big leftist. But I want to play you his commencement address at Brandeis University. This shows you again, what we're up against. This is Ken Burns at Brandeis.
Which brings me to a moment I've dreaded and forces me to suspend my long-standing attempt at neutrality. There is no real choice this November. There is only the perpetuation, however flawed and feeble you might perceive it, of our fragile
Is he talking about Biden?
49-year-old experiment, or the entropy that will engulf and destroy us if we take the other route. When, as Mercy Otis Warren would say, the checks of conscience are thrown aside and a deformed picture of the soul is revealed. The presumptive Republican nominee is the opioid of all opioids, an easy cure for what some believe is the solution to our myriad pains and problems, when in fact, with him, you end up re-enslaved with an even bigger problem, a worse affliction and addiction, a bigger delusion, James Baldwin would say, the author and finisher of our national existence, our national suicide, as Mr. Lincoln said. Do not be seduced by easy equalization. There is nothing equal about this equation. We are at an existential crossroads in our political and civic lives. This is a choice that could not be clearer.
Okay. First of all, I've never heard such pompous and sanctimonious BS. I don't know if half of those people understood. He used half of it was words that I don't think most people at Brandeis or anywhere understood. Secondly, I love when people quote people who I'm sure most of the people in the audience had no idea. He's like, as the great historian Doorknob Windshield Walker used to say, like, anyway, that in itself, the pompous, sanctimonious BS that spewed from him was enough. But this guy talking about the opioid of opioids, let's stop for a second. The opioid problem, if you really want to get into it, and I know this is not what he was using some kind of hyperbole here, but the opioid problem is caused by Biden with an open border. Their policies have been horrible. Wrong analogy, Jack, to quote Joe Biden. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is you wonder why these kids protest and do the things they do. This is the kind of moron that gets up there. And by the way, this is just another reason why we should defund PBS. This is what our tax dollars. So we send PBS money and then they hire a guy like Ken Burns to tell history through documentary. This is what's going on. You want to know why we think the things that we do, why history is perceived the way it is? Because he creates things that present history in a way that favors the left. No more. I just, again, I get such a, it rubs me the wrong way, but this is another example of what we're up against. This is why your college students coming home saying, I can't vote for Trump. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go protest. I'm going to stand for the trans people and Hamas because they're that dumb. They're getting spewed a bunch of ridiculous information from people like Ken Burns. Anyway, I mean, this is what's happening. By the way, speaking of your tax dollars, I couldn't help but notice this. The U.S. government, the Biden administration, wants to figure out how they can play both sides. You know, both sidesism, something CNN loves to talk about. So they want to help the Palestinians. And I don't know if you remember this, but in order to get them aid, they built this massive pier, this temporary pier, so that they could deliver aid, even though, as a side note, we were told that that could actually put U.S. troops in harm's way. Okay, side note. So they spend $320 million. Let that sink in. $320 million of money that we don't have to build a pier so that they can get this humanitarian aid into Gaza. Guess what happened? The pier broke apart on Sunday due to rough seas. Bye-bye. Poof. This is the incompetence of this administration's policies. We want to spend a ton of money on a floating pier, and then rough seas come and wash the whole thing away. $320 million. Bye-bye. You don't think we could have figured that one out? If we put the bridge there, the seas are going to tear it down. I assume someone talked to the Army Corps of Engineers, or at least somebody who went. Maybe they all went to Brandeis. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know. But this is what we're dealing with, this level of incompetence. The Biden administration trying to play it both ways and say, oh, you know what we'll do? We'll build a pier, and then we'll just shovel the humanitarian aid in. Oops, we forgot to take into account that the seas and the roughness and the meteorology and the weather and all that stuff. What the heck? You guys are total morons. And we pay for it. Student loans, wipe them out. Cancel them. Don't worry. We'll shift the burden onto you. $320 million to make a pier that's going to get washed away. Don't worry about it. It'll make us feel better. It's a good talking point. I got another beauty for you. I told you this the other day. The Biden campaign forgot to do the math and look at a calendar when it came to ballot access. So there are two states, Alabama and Ohio, that because their convention is so late, which is, by the way, one of my little political dork things here is conventions matter because they legally create the nominee. And there's campaign finance and all sorts of ballot access issues that come of that once you legally make someone the nominee. Well, they realized in the state of Alabama and Ohio, because their convention's so late, that they were going to miss the deadlines. Well, Alabama did them a solid and said, we'll change the rule and we'll allow you to have a one-time, whatever fix. Ohio said, here's the deal. We will do this, which again, I don't understand why we fix the problem that they create. Republicans have a majority in both states. They just assumed it would happen. The Democrats. It's like saying, well, I didn't turn in the homework because every year the teacher gives an extension. Did the teacher tell you? No. I looked at, in the past, they gave some of my friends used to take that class. That's not how it works. What's happening when and so they're blaming the Republicans, by the way, for this problem. Anyway, so Ohio said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll create a patch, we'll fix, if you will. We'll allow this one time that you can do this so that we don't have to change our laws. We'll just have a law that says that in this cycle. But we're going to, as part of the law, we're going to say that foreign outside entities, remember like the Swiss guy, if you watched the Dark Money episode, who are funneling money not to political candidates, but to leftist organizations. They want to ban that. And the Democrats balked and said, no, we can't have that. Again, why? Why wouldn't you ban foreign money? You should want that, right? They don't. So they balked and said, no way, Ohio. We won't agree to that. So the DNC yesterday announced that Biden is actually going to be nominated through, quote, a virtual roll call ahead of the August convention to ensure he appears on the Ohio ballot this November. Republican officials in the state failed to implement a workaround allowing for the traditional tally. Ohio's ballot deadline is August 7th, 2 weeks before the DNC planned to hold its official presidential nomination and in-person convention. In other words, it's the Republicans' fault for having a law on the books that they didn't comply with. And the Biden administration is attacking them. It's your fault. I'm sorry. It's your fault for us having a law on the book that you didn't comply with just because in the past sometimes it has been fixed. These guys are unbelievable. By the way, just a little hint. Somebody out there with a little more time in their hands should look at the DNC rules and see if this is actually permitted. Now, you can replace a candidate after the convention, but do the rules allow for a roll call to happen earlier before the convention convenes? I don't think so. Now, I'm admitting right now for you liberal nut jobs, I'm not a DNC expert. I don't know all of the Dem rules. But I have a hard time thinking that they put this in there. Again, I know in both parties you can replace a candidate after the convention. I have a hard time believing that this is permitted under their rules. Somebody needs to take a look at it. Now, will they? No. Do you think the New York Times or the Washington Post care? They're like, oh, thank God Biden's going to be on the Ohio ballot. I'm telling you, look, somebody look. All right. One other thing that I think I want to look into at some point soon. There is this doctor that has come out and was brought in front of the House Oversight Committee the other day, and they're admitting that they evaded FOIA laws, Freedom of Information Act. In one of the emails, the doctor says that he's been talking to Tony, i.e. Fauci. He's been talking to Tony Fauci, telling him, hey, we know how to get around the FOIA laws. We send them to Tony's personal emails. Then he talks about the fact that a colleague helping get around FOIA laws. All these people at the National Institutes of Health are figuring out ways to get around public disclosure. This is something the left prides itself on. Transparency, the right to know, the freedom of the press, right? Where's the interest of the aforementioned Washington Post and New York Times, ABC, CNN? They don't care because it's Tony Fauci. You can't get rid of Lord Fauci. He's doing great work. What is going on? These guys are literally have it uncovered now. The committee has the emails where they discuss evading public scrutiny. What are the origins of COVID? What did the government do or not do? Where was the money flowing? We don't know because they evaded it and no one cares. By the way, this is another reminder. We wouldn't know any of this if we didn't have the majority in the House. You think Dems are going to investigate this? No way. It matters. At least we can hold some of these folks accountable. And yes, I get that they are not going to face any consequences. But here's the reality. It matters that we know about it. Because every time the media says, we don't know where COVID founded, we don't know this, we don't know it because these guys evaded the law and no one cares. When I was in the Trump White House, it was all about visitor logs and all this transparency and who was doing what and where, and the public has a right to know. Where is your concern now? It's not there because they are complicit in this. They don't care, do they? Anyway, we got a great panel for you tomorrow. We're going to keep up on the Trump trial, who's doing what, how it went, the jury instructions, what the jury is. I don't know when we'll get a verdict. Friday, we've got Carrie Lake. She's going to tell us about what's going on in Arizona and how she's winning. Plus, John McGuire, he's running for a House seat in Virginia. And Trump just endorsed him over Bob Good, the current chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Why? We're going to ask him. Friday's going to be a big, big show on what's being done to maintain the House and win the Senate. You're not going to want to miss this. And again, tomorrow, big panel discussion, everything that's happening. Please continue to follow us on all platforms, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, all the I's, iTunes, iHeart, iThis, iThat. Wherever you can get it, please double down. I appreciate all of our sponsors being with us. Please continue to go out and visit them. Thanks for being with us here today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.